was a sluggish game. Hey, what else is new? But Miami got big performances from Jimmy Butler and Caleb Martin, generating just enough offense at just the right time and taking advantage of some Orlando miscues to get a win over the Magic. We break down the game, Miami's offensive struggles, and who stepped up on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. However you might be tuning in, YouTube, Odyssey, your favorite podcast app. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Feels like we know the formula by now. The Heat miss a ton of three-pointers, but they force enough turnovers to score enough points in the paint to win a clutch game, and that's exactly what the Heat did tonight. They beat the Magic 110-105. We're recording this Friday night after the game here from Miami-Dade Arena, where the Heat missed 23 of their 33 three-point attempts in the game, but they did score 32 points off of 20 Magic turnovers. They outscored Orlando 54-32 in the paint. Jimmy Butler with 29 points. Bam had 20. 7 different Heat players registered a steal in this one. It's a weird formula, David, but it's been working despite the Heat shooting a league worst 31% on three-point attempts in the month of January. They've won 8 of 12 this month, and they're now in sole position of 6th place in the East. So is this the formula, David?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. We keep railing against this like this is a typical. Like we keep expecting the three-point shot to drop, or all of a sudden the offense is going to be more fluid because, we saw that in stretches last year. But what if this is just this version of the team? This is just how they operate. They're going to do just enough defensively. They're going to force turnovers, as you pointed out, 32 points off of Orlando's turnovers. They're going to get into the paint, score at a wide margin there, outscore opponents there, lead in almost every statistical category, as you asked Eric Spoelstra after the game, and that be able to shoot well from three-point line. Like, that's the thing that's, I think, most difficult to process because they were so good at that last year, and this year they're quite the opposite end of that spectrum. So I guess this is the norm here. And maybe it's a matter of leaning into those things that you weren't doing particularly well last year, and then hoping that eventually the three-point shooting will come around. Maybe with the return of Duncan Robinson, somebody who was widely vilified by a lot of Heat fans, and now all of a sudden he's being looked at as a possible savior. I don't know. I really can't make heads or tails of it. I think, we asked Eric Spoelstra about that after the game, and he kind of just says, "Oh, this is who the Heat are."
Yeah, I've got the quote here. Is pretty. He says, "We know what our KPIs are. We know the formula. KPI is a sales term, key performance indicators." And I asked him, I was like, "Are you?" Because if you look at how the Heat have been winning games, again, 8-4 in their last 12 games this month, they're winning most of the key box score categories. They're winning the turnover battle. They're winning, they're assisting a lot of their makes. They're winning the points in the paint. They're winning fast break points. They're winning the second chance points. They're not tonight. There was some foul concerns, but for the most part this month, they have not been that big of a concern. Right. And so I asked, I was like, is there more of an emphasis on, hey, the three-point shot's not going to go in. So while we wait for those three-pointers to just sort of catch fire and start going in, is there even more of an emphasis to sort of win all the other categories? And he said, like, Not really. And I think he was sort of saying what you just said. It's like, we're just not a good three-point shooting team. And so if we're going to win games, we know the formula. And it's dominate the painted area and force turnovers in order to lead to transition defense. The Heat are going to win games with two-pointers this year. That's what they're going to do. And how they get to those two-pointers is going to be in a variety of ways, but for the most part, it's going to be Bam hitting those floaters, the Tyler Herro and Bam pick and roll, the Jimmy Butler and Bam pick and roll, which basically carried Miami home tonight against the Magic. 2 back-to-back buckets with Jimmy and Bam running that pick and roll. And then, obviously, getting steals, whether it's switching everything defensively or going into that zone, mixing up the looks, but getting those steals, creating turnovers, and then getting easy buckets on the break. And that's the formula.
If it hasn't worked at times, it's because it's missing something that we saw tonight, which was Jimmy Butler being aggressive the whole game through. He was, very engaged early on, and the fourth quarter really turned it up. Just kind of took over the game when he was inserted midway through the fourth quarter. But he was so aggressive throughout, and I think it was just a phenomenal performance from him. 29 points on 10 of 17 shooting. Got to the line 12 times, 9 of 12. I wish he had hit those 3 there. Maybe provided a little bit more of a cushion. But you know what? That's who the Heat is. That's who Jimmy is. Just great performance from him overall. I liked his aggression throughout the game. I think that was really something that we even haven't seen as the offense shifts a little bit to that Tyler Bam pick and roll. When Tyler's struggling offensively the way he was, Jimmy kind of took it upon himself to just be more aggressive, much more consistently, I think, throughout the game.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler telling a funny story about how Spo forgot to check him in midway through the fourth because Spo was so busy trying to figure out all the other stuff, going some interesting closing lineups. We're going to talk about those decisions to bench Kyle Lowry at the end of the game. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Tyler Herro's struggles, like you alluded to, later on in the show when we get to our questions. But Jimmy checking himself into the game at like the 7-minute mark. He said 6 minutes and 45 seconds is when he looked, and he was like, nobody's putting me in, so I'm just going to go in because this is when I'm supposed to go in. So he checks himself in, comes in, boom, pick and roll with Bam Adebayo, comes off of the Bam screen, spins, gets a bucket, and then right away again, spins, gets into the lane, gets fouled, finger guns on the floor. It was, and I love it because he comes in and he's like, look, we have a chance to win this game. We should win this game. We're better than the Orlando Magic. And the Magic have been playing really well. This is a good quality win. The Magic have been playing really well lately. Mm-hmm. They're healthy. They're kind of like Miami in that they just finally got healthy for the first time all year.
Right.
They have a lot of their guards back and everything like that. And so they've been playing really well. And so this was going to be a tough game, and the Magic always play Miami hard, and this was the first time they met all year, first time you see Paolo Banchero, etc. And so Jimmy Butler smelled blood in the water, and he said, you know what, we're going to win this game. I'm checking myself in, and I'm going to get to the basket, and I'm going to get fouled, and I'm going to do all the Jimmy Butler things, and he did that.
All the Jimmy Butler. Do you think it was more about Miami's offensive struggles tonight, or is it more about Orlando's tight defense? Because I saw a lot of Magic fans, including Philip Rossman-Reich, of Locked On Magic, talking about the great defense from the Magic players. And yes, they were playing well defensively. I think you have to definitely give them some credit. But we've seen this script so repeatedly from Miami in terms of their own offensive struggles that I kind of hesitate to give the Orlando credit that much.
I give them credit for being a young team. Look, they come in, they're 19 and 30. They're really, really young. Look, when you have Wagner and Banchero who could basically switch, they switch everything. I think it was Wagner that started on Jimmy Butler, and Banchero was on Caleb Martin for some reason at the beginning of the game. But they've got so much size that they could throw at guys, and when they switch stuff, it is an issue. And Miami was targeting Wendell Carter Jr. quite a bit early on in this game, and actually Wendell Carter ended up fouling out. And I wish I would have. I forgot. I was going to ask Jimmy this at the end of the game because he checks in the fourth quarter and then immediately draws that foul on Wendell Carter Jr. like that I said before, and then he starts laughing, and I'm like, did you know he had 5 fouls? And did you purposely do that to just get him to foul out of the game? I would bet you the answer was yes, and I wish I would have asked him. I forgot to ask him, but. Wendell Carter fouled out, but otherwise I thought they did a pretty decent job. But the thing is, like, he got open looks from 3-point range, and if a few more of those look, then the defense from Orlando doesn't look quite as good. So I give credit to a young team defending well for a young team, for sure. I thought the Magic played well tonight. But to me, it really is more of Miami's 3-point shooting still not going in.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that. Whether
it could be, it's a little bit of both.
It is.
There's gray area in this stuff. Let's mention the fouls really, or not the fouls, the steals really quick because I 7 different players, like I said, registering a steal in this one. Jimmy Butler had 2 of them. Caleb had 1. Bam had 1. Tyler had 1. Kyle had 2. Vic had 1, and then Max Strus had 1. That is a lot of steals.
Forcing turnovers.
It bears repeating. 32 points off of 20 turnovers in this game.
That is an
insane mark.
That does feel like it's concerning, right?
For the Magic?
Well, certainly for the Magic. But I mean for Miami, that they're relying so much on their defense to ignite what it is just a really weak offense.
I mean, it is a concern. Look, this is the formula. It's not the ideal formula, but it is the formula. It's the realistic formula. Would you love to go out there and make 20 of 40 3-pointers every night? For sure you would. But that's not what this Heat team is. And if you're going to win games, this is what it is. And that's why everybody from Bam to Spo to Jimmy to Vic to Kyle, everybody, even Tyler, says our defense feeds our offense. There's an acknowledgement, and they're being very realistic, and they're 6 games over 500. They're sole position of 6th place in the East, 2 games out of the 5th spot. Again, we'll talk about the seeding later on when we get to our listener questions. But next, we're going to get to our credit cookies. It's time to put some praise on Caleb Martin, who had one of the more impressive plays of the Heat for the Heat this season. I'm going to tell you what it is next here on Locked On Heat. Locked On Heat is also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please subscribe, and thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. It's a Heat win, which means we're getting in the kitchen, and we're whipping up some credit cookies. What kind of credit cookies do we have for a Friday night?
You win against the Magic? Maybe a fortune cookie?
A fortune cookie. All right, so we got 10 fortune cookies. We mentioned Jimmy Butler. Let's start there. You already gave out the box score stats. Everything that I don't know that there's much more to say about Jimmy Butler. You're absolutely right. Set the tone from the beginning to the end. Came in for the biggest stretch in the final half of that fourth quarter. The 2 big buckets out of the Bam pick and roll with him. Drawing that foul on Wendell Carter, getting him to foul out, taking a big body out of the paint for Orlando.
Yeah.
4?
4 seems about fair. Just because there were key performances from other guys that stepped up, maybe not as dominating or as impressive overall. But yeah, I think we have to give you enough leeway to award some of those cookies to other players. But yes, Jimmy, fantastic.
9 of 12 from the free throw line was huge too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What can you say? Like the jumper was falling, he was getting to the rim, taking advantage of Orlando's size and using his strength and speed. He just looked like he was a different player out there. You know, good for him. Good performance.
Let's go to Max Strus, who hit 5 of 7 from 3-point range.
Yeah.
So he made 5 3-pointers tonight. The rest of the Heat made 5 3-pointers. He was 5 of 7. The rest of the Heat were 5 of 25. Did I do that? 26? 5 of 26?
5 of 26.
5 of 26. Not great.
20% on everybody
Max
else.
Strus only took 3 3-pointers within the first 3 quarters. And I tweeted this over, and I was like, why are they not getting Max more involved in the offense? Run a floppy action. Run their splash action to get Max the little corner shot that they do when one of the 3-point shooters sprints to the corner and somebody else sits that baseline screen to just set him up. That's the Heat call that their splash action. Like, just do more of that. That's all the patented and stuff that you do, all your pet actions, and they just weren't. And I was like, why? He's the only guy making shots. And then they open up the fourth quarter. Max Strus hits a 3-pointer right away to start the fourth quarter. He goes 2 of 4 in that fourth quarter. So he takes more threes in that fourth quarter than he did the entire game previously. He was huge, 17 points off the bench. Just every single one of those threes felt so needed just to loosen up the offense a little bit. The Strus got loose. The Strus made the Heat's offense just a little bit looser too. So I think he gets 2. 2 seems good. Gabe needs to get 1. Kind of same for him. Actually, it was really cold all game, and then just hit 2 3-pointers that were really big at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Him and Max both making 3, combining to make 3 of Miami's first 3 3-pointers in the fourth quarter, and that was huge to kind of give them a little bit of a cushion there. So I think we give him 1, which leaves us with 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we have 7. We have 3 more. 2 to Bam. 1 to Bam. 2 to Bam. 20 points, 7 of 14 shooting, 6 of 7 from the free throw line, 7 assists.
And 1 to Caleb.
6 rebounds. 1 to Caleb too. I want to talk about Caleb, but Bam, he was on triple-double watch early in the game.
Yeah, it was a quiet night for him. They weren't going to him offensively to start the game. I think it was more about Jimmy Butler attacking, maybe recognizing some problems there with Orlando's size, challenging Bam a little bit more. They were denying him the ball a little bit early on. They weren't able to feed him the way they have, and again, cutting off Tyler, so they weren't able to initiate those pick and roll triggers, as Spo likes to point out so much. I just, I think he had a really good game overall. Like you mentioned, triple-double watch, but just wasn't establishing himself the same way as he did against the against the Boston Celtics earlier this week.
I thought his screen setting was really, really strong tonight, and he played like a center tonight, if that makes sense. Like, he was just like, yep, I'm going to set the screens, and the ball handlers are going to score.
Did you see that screen he set against Jalen Suggs in the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
Just dropped him.
Yep.
Completely. It was amazing.
And then he had one where he sort of snuck up on Franz Wagner at the end, and Wagner was guarding Jimmy, and Bam just sort of sneaks up and like kind of scoots over right behind him, sets like an angled screen that Jimmy used, and then so Jimmy darts towards Bam's screen, and Franz has no shame on Orlando's help defenders for not calling out the screen there.
Absolutely.
Maybe Franz didn't hear it. But Franz just runs right into Bam. Had no idea he was standing there. So I'm like, wow, Bam with like a sneaky but strong screen setting there. So Bam gets what did we say? 2. So that means
and 1 for Caleb.
And then 1 for Caleb. So Caleb, the box score is good.
You know what? We should take away 1 from Gabe. Not that he had a bad performance in any way, but Caleb in the fourth quarter was phenomenal.
Right.
I think it's
I'm
worth pointing out there. And Spoelstra talking about him post-game, saying what excitement he brings, the kind of juice that he brings off to the offense, and he's been playing at a really high level, struggling a little bit in the first half, but in the second half, just really, really dynamic, especially in the fourth quarter. Those twisting layups in the paint when Miami needed that offense to be able to separate themselves from Orlando came down to the wire, as it often does with Miami, and if not for Caleb scoring in the fourth quarter, they may not win the game.
I think we gave 1 to Gabe. I'm okay with doing just a shout out to Gabe and then giving 2 to Caleb. That to me sounds good.
If we took 1 from Gabe and now it's 2 to Caleb.
Okay. Did we give 1 or 2 to Gabe originally?
We gave 2 before. I took 1, gave 2 because we only had 1 left. You got to keep up with the math. I know it's not your strong suit.
It's hard for me.
A lot of good skills. Math ain't one of them.
All right, 2 to Caleb Martin then. You mentioned all the stuff. The effort set the tone, as Spo said in that fourth quarter. Defensively, he was everywhere. They put him. They went to a zone quite a bit in that fourth quarter, and you had Caleb at the top of that zone. You mentioned that spinning acrobatic layup. So Caleb is in the zone on defense, picks off a pass with his right hand outstretched, just grabs it out of the air, and then takes off down the court. And Orlando did a good job, actually, of getting back on transition. A really good job. And I was like, okay, Bam's kind of sprinting into the lane, not really open. The Magic kind of took away that passing lane. The other Heat players were sort of behind the play, and I'm like, all right, Caleb. And I'm thinking in my head, Caleb, just pull it out. It's fine. Like, give credit to Orlando. They got back, pull it out, and do it, and get yourself into an offensive set. And he was like, nah, not going to do that. And he just drove right through 3 different Magic players. Gets bumped in the middle of the air. He's going up with his right hand on the right side of the basket. Gets bumped in the middle of the air. Starts the reverse. Yeah. And there's another Magic player's body just sort of in the way of his reverse. He switches hands. Goes to the left hand. And then just sort of angles it up. And it goes in. You mentioned Jordan-esque. The first name that popped in my mind was Kyrie Irving. And not because it was Holocaust Remembrance Night. It was because it was just that kind of crazy acrobatic finish. It was that crazy acrobatic finish. I was like, wow, that was wild. And I teased it earlier. I think it was the most impressive take to the basket of the year for the Miami Heat. That was wild.
That's fair. Look, I mean, it's hard to compare. Look, acrobatics certainly.
Yeah, powerful to keep your body control in the air like that.
I tend to gravitate more towards the Bam dunks myself, but yeah, you know what? I can't deny that
for the art.
It's certainly up there. It's certainly up there.
Let's get to our listener questions here. Our first question: what's up with Tyler Herro? I got a stat for you. Let's just start with that. Tyler Herro in 6 games since returning from his Achilles injury, 6 of 37 on three-pointers. He's missed 31 of his last 37 three-point attempts. That's 16% from that distance.
He's got to be hurt.
He's hurt, or is he? He missed 4 games because of the Achilles. He missed one of those because of the birth of his new child. And
this is when he slipped on the FTX logo that time.
Yep.
That scrambling play at the end of the game.
Yep. And basically, since they took the FTX logo off, he has not been able to hit a shot. So maybe it's like I don't know. Maybe he's like, this is my sweet spot, and then they got rid of it. I don't know.
I don't think that's it. That's a heck of a conspiracy theory. Which
there
I'm totally open
there are
to.
some conspiracy theories on social media, like new baby. Maybe he's not sleeping that much at night. Like that could be part of it.
I could speak.
He's human.
As a father with a baby, I know exactly what that process is like, and let me tell you, you don't get a lot of sleep. You can sleep wherever you can. It's
so
like, and for him being practicing all the time, being on the road, etc., he's got to be struggling with it.
The Heat go on the road here.
It could be the first opportunity.
Charlotte. What is it? Charlotte, then the Knicks. Is there a game in between? Charlotte on Sunday.
Yeah, Cleveland on Tuesday.
On Tuesday. Knicks Thursday.
Yeah.
If he goes off in those games and the 3-point shooting comes around,
then we blame the baby.
2
slices of blame pie for Tyler's new baby.
Then we blame the baby. Kenny writes in, thoughts on the closing lineup. No Victor Oladipo, no Kyle Lowry, no Gabe Vincent. And just to be clear, the closing lineup tonight was Bam, Jimmy, Caleb, Tyler, Herro, and who was the other person?
Caleb, Bam, Gabe, Max Strus, and Jimmy.
Right. Was it Gabe? Yeah, right. No Max Strus. Tyler.
Sorry,
Tyler. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts? I think mostly the thing is no Victor Oladipo. He had a bad night tonight. That's going to happen. You're coming off the bench.
6 minutes in the fourth quarter, substituted out for Jimmy. It
wasn't a great night for him. The thing with Kyle Lowry is that he wasn't in at the end, and I actually thought he played a pretty good game. Started off really strong in that first quarter, but was not in there at the end. Do you make anything of Kyle Lowry sitting out the fourth quarter? Because
he was asked about that by Ira Winderman, and Spo kind of downplayed it. He said, "What was it? 3 games ago when he had that big fourth quarter against the New Orleans Pelicans?" Great point by him. I don't think he was consciously choosing to sit out Kyle because of any kind of late game woes or anything like that. Like, he still recognizes Kyle as a gamer. Those were his exact words. I tend to kind of agree with it. Maybe it's just reading the flow of the game, not necessarily targeting said player and saying, "Look, you're not going to be able to play." Maybe I don't know. I don't see it that way.
I don't think it's a big deal, but I do think it's meaningful. The fact that, look, in Penn every single night, Jimmy and Bam are going to close the game,
Fair.
No matter what, and even Tyler now is in that category. He is going to close every game no matter what. Tyler Herro did not shoot well tonight. He didn't even really play very well tonight. 4 of 12 overall, missed all 3 of his three-pointers, had 3 assists, but had 2 turnovers. That's not a great ratio. Just scored 10 points. Defensively, I actually thought he was pretty good. But he was in crunch time. He was put back in. He's now of that level on the Heat. He's a core player, and core players go in to close the game for the most part. Kyle Lowry used to be that guy, without question, in at the end of the game, in the closing lineup. He has now been knocked down a peg because of his struggles this year. Not to say that he's not still a leader on the team. I don't make it more than what it is. It is just only what it is, and what it is that Kyle Lowry is not that anymore. He's now knocked down just a little bit of a tier, and if he's struggling, he's going to come out, and that's it.
I don't think this is permanent, though.
No, I hope not, because if it's permanent, that means Lowry's really struggling. No, I think if Lowry gives you a reason, he's going to put you in. But the other thing, too, is, like, those guys were playing really well. Like, Caleb had to be in there.
Who do you take
Gabe
out?
had to be in there. Like, those guys were playing really well.
I think if there's a need for more offense, despite his struggles throughout the game, Tyler is certainly the better option. Like, he's a better option over almost anybody.
It's going to be Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler at the end no matter what at this point. That much has been established. Now it's just who are the other 2 going to be every single night, and that's kind of where we're at. EJ Brooksy writes in, what do you think of the ceiling for this team's seeding? I think we have a solid chance at the 4 seed if we keep winning. So like we said earlier, the Heat, sole possession of the 6th seed tonight. They're 28-22. That moves them a full game over the Knicks, who are 27-23. It also moves them within a game and a half of Cleveland, who are there at the 5 seed. Cleveland losing tonight, so they drop a game. Cleveland is 30-21. Like I just said, Miami's 28-22, so a game and a half behind Cleveland. Brooklyn, they're only 2 games ahead of Miami for that 4th seed. Now, there's a whole other tier. Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee. Boston's way ahead. Miami's 7 games back of them. Then you got Philly and Milwaukee. They're 2.5 games behind Boston. But Brooklyn being 5 games back, Cleveland 5.5, Miami 7 games back of the number 1 seed. That's kind of now, Miami is doing their best to kind of muscle their way into that tier with Brooklyn, who's obviously without Kevin Durant for a while, and Cleveland, who's been struggling a little bit, 4 of 6 in their last 10.
Yeah, the 4th seed certainly seems attainable. And I'll put a caveat in there saying that they only have 3 home games in February, and they're going to be on the road a lot. There's also the All-Star break to provide a little bit of a respite there, but it's going to be a tough stretch for them, going up against some good quality teams on the road. Not ideal for the Miami Heat, but they're building momentum. They're trending in the right direction. So it's a kind of month where I think Heat fans would probably be satisfied with the team going 500 just because it's so challenging. If they're able to get some good quality wins on the road against some of these great opponents, then at least they'll be able to continue treading water, and then they can close out the season well, as they often do. That is the way this Miami Heat has always operated under Eric Spoelstra, is that they always close the second half much more effectively than they do the first for whatever reason. So I think the 4th seed is certainly the goal. I think it's certainly attainable. You're also counting on teams to continue struggling. Brooklyn, can they incorporate, Kevin Durant, and was he going to be back at full strength before the All-Star break in order to help keep that 4th seed? Perhaps. Could Cleveland take a step back? Who knows? I mean, maybe even Philadelphia. They're one injury away. If something happens to Joel Embiid or James Harden, that whole thing gets derailed to some degree. So it could always happen, and we'll see how it plays out. But that's the goal. That is the goal.
The goal is a top 4 seed. Probably the 4th seed at this point is the only realistic goal, and that would mean home court advantage in the first round. I don't think that the Heat can get the 4th seed. I think once Kevin Durant comes back, Brooklyn's just going to keep winning, and that's going to be it. And they have enough of a cushion now where that's going to be fine for the Nets. KD comes back, that team is a title contender, and I don't expect them not to be. So does Cleveland slip a little bit? I don't know. Like, they're another one of these teams before the deadline. Do they make a move to sort of shore up their small forward spot? That's another thing. I don't know. Miami also sort of involved in trade talks. Do they make a move? I tend to think that the Heat, if they do make a move, and you and I have talked enough about it, that it's going to be something more marginal, not something such like a landmark kind of thing to acquire a superstar that's going to send them over the top midseason, because those trades so rarely happen in the middle of a season. So I think the 5th seed is probably their ceiling. If we're talking about a ceiling, I expect them to probably just stick here at 6, and that feels right for them. Like I think if you're just looking at who the best teams this season so far have been, this feels right. Like Boston, Philly, Milwaukee have been better. Brooklyn has been better. Cleveland has been better. The Heat have been better than the Knicks, the Hawks, the Pacers, the Wizards, the Bulls, all these other teams.
How about let's flip this? Which of the 4 teams currently ranked 1st through 4th in the Eastern Conference is the best bet for Miami to be able to advance to the next round?
What do you mean? If they play them in a series?
Yes.
Well, who would it be? Right now, they'd be matched up with Milwaukee.
No, if they were the 6th seed, they'd go up against Milwaukee. But let's say Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, of those 3, or even Cleveland, who has a chance to surpass Milwaukee theoretically. Who do you like Miami's chances against any of those 4 teams? Put you in the spot here.
Yeah, I haven't really given this much thought.
I mean, I think they could knock off Philadelphia theoretically. I mean, I think they have the experience, etc. I mean, Milwaukee would be a tougher opponent than Philadelphia. If you had to rank them, how about that? Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Brooklyn. Really, who would you want to face?
Philly, Milwaukee, Brooklyn. Those 3.
Yeah, of those 3, rank which one is the more difficult opponent for Miami.
I would say Milwaukee, Philadelphia, then Brooklyn.
Really?
I think the Heat would have a chance, just because how the Heat play. I think they can keep up with Brooklyn's pace. Both teams they just switch everything. I think that would actually be a really fun stylistic series. And you put Jimmy on Kevin Durant, you do your best, and you trap Kyrie Irving. You send 2 to the ball every time he comes across the screen, and then you just try to dominate in the paint and force bad passes and dominate in transition. With Milwaukee, I don't. If they're healthy, yes. I still think that they're probably the favorite in the East. Just given how Boston's been fine.
The odds makers agree with that too. So.
I really like the Sixers team for some reason. They've been playing really well, man. They've won 6 in a row, 8-2 in the last 10.
Yeah,
they're really, really good.
They also always fall apart.
No, they do. In the playoffs, it's like, all right, like if James Harden not gonna, bleep the bed, we'll see. All right. That does it for all of our questions, and that does it for our Friday night post-game show. Heat win against the Orlando Magic. We'll be back Monday with a recap of their game in Charlotte. But for now, thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. Now make your second listen game-to-game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game-to-Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game-to-Game on Locked On NBA. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. David, have a great weekend.
Likewise, everybody.